We are currently in a period of Mars retrograde. Mars went retrograde June 26th and will continue in that retrograde movement until August 27th. What does that mean? When Mars goes retrograde, it appears to us from our Earth perspective as if Mars is moving backwards in the sky, as if it's making this loop and then it goes back into its regular forward movement. It isn't actually that Mars is moving backwards in the sky, it's rather that where we are on Earth with our orbit around the Sun and the different speed at which we orbit the Sun, it's a period of time when Mars in its orbit appears to be going backwards, much like if you're driving in the passing lane and you pass a car going more slowly than you, it appears for a period of time as if that car is going backwards. So this is significant in that from our Earth perspective, it's as if Mars is pausing, going back, seems to be moving backwards, and then it goes back into its forward movement. The interesting thing is that Mars goes retrograde a little bit over every 2 years. It goes retrograde for 58 to 81 days. For this period of time, it will be from June 26th through August 27th. When Mars goes retrograde, its orbit is a little bit over 2 years, and it is when it comes to that place in its orbit when it's closest to the Earth and opposite the Sun, again from our Earth perspective. This means that when Mars goes into its retrograde movement, to us, it is brighter in the sky than ever because it's closer to our planet and because when it's opposite the Sun is when Mars is at its brightest. This is a very interesting transition time for Mars in its orbit because Mars moves from its connection with the Sun, then it begins to move further and further from the Sun until it's opposite the Sun in the sky, and this is when we see that retrograde motion, and then it will continue on its journey until it returns back close to the Sun again. We often think of Mars as representing the hero's journey, the hero setting forth from home, from source. Mars beginning its journey away from the Sun, setting out on its adventure. Mars is in its journey of growth, of setting out on its own independent path to learn, to have experiences, to grow. And often we experience Mars in our lives, in our charts, as that part of us that wants to be assertive, that wants to take action, that wants to express our own will and make decisions and move forward in the world in some way, or act, bring out our gifts, somehow take action in our lives. So that beginning journey of Mars as it goes from the Sun to its point of opposition with the Sun is really that journey of separation and individuation and exploration and expression of the self. When Mars comes to its point of opposition from the Sun and is closest to the Earth and at its brightest is when it does that retrograde loop and is that period of time where Mars now has a chance to reflect on its journey, reflect on the adventures that have been experienced, reflect on the actions that have been taken and the decisions made. And in that way, really take that time to have a clearer sense of the meaning of those experiences And it's also a time when Mars comes more back into relationship with the sun, as it's reflecting the brightness of the sun, its source, and in relationship with the earth, as it's closest to us in that time. So it's a way in which we can take time to reflect on our own actions, to reflect on how our actions and decisions are impacting the relationships in our lives. So that retrograde period is an important time for reflection, for assessment, really taking stock of where we are, where are we putting our energy, what decisions are we making, what actions are we taking. And then as we move out of that retrograde period and Mars starts again on its journey, Mars now in its orbit is making its way back into full connection with the sun. It's a part of Mars' journey which is about now having had that time of reflection and assessment of decisions, of actions. It's now able to move on in a wiser way, in a more conscious way, really attempting to make those decisions and actions be more in alignment with the true self, more in connection with Source, and in right relationship with those around us. So this retrograde period from June 26th to August 27th is a very important time to allow yourself a chance to reflect on where you are in your journey, where you're putting your energy, what actions are you taking? Is your will in alignment with your true self and in connection with Source or not? So allow this time to be a time to really let yourself meditate and step back and observe where you are with your decisions, with your actions, with your plans. As you do this, it's important to think about the larger period around this Mars retrograde motion. The period that Mars is doing its retrograde loop during this time is from the degrees of Capricorn, the end degrees of Capricorn, into the beginning degrees of the sign of Aquarius. So it's from 28 degrees of Capricorn to 9 degrees of Aquarius. And there are two periods at the beginning, before Mars goes retrograde, and at the end, as it starts to do its direct movement again, that are called the shadow periods, where Mars enters that retrograde zone. So those periods before and after the retrograde loop are important periods of time. That period when Mars enters that retrograde zone from 28 degrees of Capricorn to 9 degrees of the sign of Aquarius starts May 12th. That's when Mars gets to 28 degrees of Capricorn. And so it's in that foreshadowing of the retrograde period that we then moved fully into June 26th. So May 12th to June 26th is that foreshadowing of the retrograde period. And then from August 27th to October 8th is the period when we leave the retrograde loop, and then there's that period of time that Mars moves forward and it leaves the retrograde zone October 8th when it begins to move past 9 degrees of Aquarius. So we have this extended period of time to be in this process of really assessing where we are individually and collectively in our actions and in our decisions. So I would encourage you, as you're in this time of Mars retrograde, this time of reflection, think back to what was going on for you, what was starting to come up for you in your own experience, your own reflections on your life around mid-May. Interestingly enough, we move into that retrograde zone May 12th. We had a new moon May 15th. And then the next day was that profound shift of Uranus from the sign of Aries into the sign of Taurus. So I'd encourage you to think about what was going on in your own thought process, your own experience, your own actions back in mid-May. Because that is a time when you are called to begin to reflect on your actions and how your actions are moving into this energy of Uranus going into Taurus, which is a time of clarity, a time of truth, a time of earth changes, a time when we're really taking stock of where we are in our experience individually and collectively here on our planet. And think about the meaning of these degrees from the end of Capricorn into the beginning of the degrees of Aquarius. Mars in Capricorn is about how are we in our actions and in our energy and in our decisions aligning ourselves with conventional reality, trying to be successful, Capricorn, trying to manifest our work in the world in some way, take action in the world in some way. Mars in Aquarius, how are we daring to be different than conventional reality? How are we daring to really live out our truth, the truth of who we are and our own creativity and our own uniqueness? Mars in Aquarius, how are we taking action individually and collectively to be doing what's just and fair and right in relationship with those around us and in those larger issues of justice and fairness and acceptance of other ethnicities, of people from other countries, other races, other genders, sexual orientation. How are we acting in ways that are fair and just and really coming from a place of acceptance of diversity and mutual respect? So as we're in this Mars retrograde period, we are called individually and collectively to look at our actions and how we are adapting to the consensus reality around us, or how are we taking time now to reflect and to see how we need to change our actions, change our decisions to be more true to who we are and more just and fair in how we interact with others. This is a call for us to do this reflecting individually and to do it collectively. How are we, as we look at what's going on in our world, fostering a global community of justice, fairness, mutual respect, acceptance, equality? How are we making decisions or taking actions that are honoring our relationship with the earth, as Uranus in Taurus is showing us through climate change and earth changes, how out of balance we are in our relationship with the environment and with the earth. So this Mars retrograde time is a really important time to look at how individually and collectively we are relating to the earth and the natural environment. Is it with respect? Is it with gratitude? Is it being in right relationship? Or are we acting in destructive ways? And it's an important time to look at the decisions that you're making and the actions that you're taking in your life. And are they fostering a sense of justice, of being in right relationship with those around you and as part of the global community? Or are you acting in ways that are out of alignment with your deeper truth, out of balance in relationship, and in a way that is not supporting that global community, but actually undermining the fabric of our interconnectedness with each other? This Mars retrograde time can be a powerful time for all of us to really step back and reflect on our actions and on our decisions and on where we're putting our energy. It's a powerful time for healing, for reflection, for change. And remember, it's a time when we can shift direction and then move forward in a way that's more conscious, in a way that is more clear, in a way in which we are really aligning our will with the energy of Source and taking action in a way that is true to our deepest self and in right relationship with the earth and with each other. May this Mars retrograde be a profound time of reflection and transition and transformation for you. Blessed be.